Welcome to the North Carolina Maternal Health Innovation Community of Practice. Today's session is Building Your Village After Baby. We're so thrilled to have Ste'Keira Shepperson, the owner and founder of Triangle Doulas of Color, here with us, and she's going to offer our presentation. I'm going to turn it over to her now.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome. Thanks for joining today. I'm so excited to be here talking with everyone and excited to see everyone and hear what questions you all have and what feedback you all have about what we're going to be talking about. So any new parents in the room who have had a baby and dealt with some of the things that we're going to talk about today, just like give me a little nod because we're going to hit on topics that will probably feel very close to home on some of the things that you may have experienced or gone through. But we're also going to, at the end, give some direction for providers and ways that we in the community can help support new families as they're transitioning into parenthood and new moms as they're transitioning into the motherhood journey. So we'll dig right in. I'm Ste'Keira Shepperson. I am the owner and founder of Triangle Doulas of Color. I am a birth and postpartum doula. I am a community lactation educator. I am also an entrepreneur and a mother of two. So I've had my own little COVID pandemic baby, like a lot of people have at this time. So my son is now 1.5, and then I have a 6-year-old daughter. So that's a little bit about me and my journey. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation so that I can share screen. Hold on one second, guys, as I get it pulled up for you. And okay, can everyone see this? Okay, perfect. So we're going to talk about building your village after baby. My journey into motherhood and my postpartum experience started when I had my daughter about 6.5 years ago. And I am a transplant to North Carolina, not from here. So my village was not here. I only knew people that I worked with in North Carolina. So we had been here for, at that time, a couple of years, probably 3 years, when I gave birth to her. So only the community that I had built around me from working were the people that we knew and could lean on for any kind of support. I did have the privilege of birthing at a birthing center that offered some community support and offered new moms groups and things of that nature that I was able to be a part of. And I feel very fortunate to have the community around me that was so familiar with birth that they did know some of the transitions that I was going through, even though themselves they weren't, going through it during that time. So in 2018, I launched Triangle Doulas of Color after learning about the Black maternal health crisis and what is happening to Black and Brown families in the United States when it comes to during their pregnancy, their whole perinatal period, right? So during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And it really inspired me. I was already working as a doula, but doing it on a volunteer basis. And this really sparked the need, I seen the need in the community. Okay, we need to do something about this. What can I do? How can I be an active role in the solution to this problem? And so doula work was my answer for that. How can I be with these families and help support so that we see less of the mortality and the morbidity rates and give empowerment to the experience of becoming a new parent or a new mom. So I launched Triangle Doulas of Color in 2018 as a birth doula. And the very first project that I actually started out with was our moms group. So I put together Triangle Mamas of Color, which is our moms group. I just started a Facebook group one day. And, from my own experience, I was fortunate enough to have a new moms group that I was a part of that was a 6-week-long program that I did with a birthing center. But in that group and in that experience, I was the only Black woman there. And that has been my experience throughout my life, growing up in the suburbs of Virginia and attending the schools that, my parents knew were going to be really good educational opportunities for me and my sisters. But we were always the only Black girl in class. It was not unusual for us to be in that space. So as a new mom, I found myself kind of in that position again. And, in many ways, I really enjoyed the experience that I had. But walking away from that experience, I still felt the isolation of not having people from my cultural background as new moms that I knew and that were local to me. And so that's what really kind of inspired as I talked to other new moms in the program, like during childbirth education classes or speaking with me during their pregnancy. This was something that a lot of women were struggling with, and a lot of people were struggling with was that isolation of new parenthood and what that might look like for different segments of the population and for people who may have different cultural backgrounds or different lifestyle identities, and wanting to create some community amongst people that they had that in common with. And so their birth, Triangle Moms of Color, in my living room back in November of 2018, where I just gathered the moms and we just started having conversations. It really was birthed. We would start having covering different topics each month, and I would pull from the group whatever people's specialties were. So we had a therapist who came and talked to us about self-care. We had an entrepreneur who is an accountant who came and talked to us about finances and starting our own businesses. And we just pulled from the resources that we had within our group to learn from one another. So in the virtual world, we had this online group that was growing and growing. And so every month I started to do a business thread and see what resources we had amongst ourselves, who had businesses that we may not know, who had resources for different things that other families might be looking for, things to do with their children, providers they might be looking for, different service offerings. And that became part of what the online presence, what we did to support one another. And then in real life, having these once a month moms groups where we pulled everyone together in person and had these conversations and let our babies all play. So that is how Triangle Doulas of Color and Triangle Mamas of Color kind of came to be. We offer birth and postpartum doula services, our moms group, as well as an array of classes. So childbirth education, which is also a great way of building your village even before your baby comes, is taking a childbirth education class where, especially if it's a series class where you can meet people and establish more relationship and community with them over the weeks of doing your course. But we offer childbirth education. We offer postpartum and newborn care and infant feeding classes, and an empowered pregnancy class for people when they are in their earlier stages of pregnancy. And this is one of our groups right before the pandemic. So this was like probably March of 2020, maybe February, but right before the pandemic, we were actually meeting in Triangle Town Center Mall at a little store that was set up there that was all local mom-owned businesses in this one location. And it was a really nice concept. And they had the space that we were able to rent out and do moms groups. So let's talk about some of the issues that we face as new parents coming into motherhood, coming into parenthood for the very first time. What can that look like? What can some of those issues look like for us? So isolation is a really big one. I hit on that a little bit as my own experience with feeling isolation, but most new parents that I talk to feel this way for one reason or another. So one really big reason for feeling isolation can be support or lack of support. So if people do not have their original village close by, or maybe they don't have, a recent experience that I am now having to explore is not having my own mother. So, mothers may have passed away, and that maternal figure in our lives is usually who we're kind of leaning on for like, hey, how do I do this? How do I take care of this little person? What am I supposed to do? Mom, mom, how do I do this? And that lack of support can come from, not having your own family around, not having your original like friend circle, maybe who you went to high school, who you grew up with, who you went to college with, being a transplant to a new area, as well as not having people that are in the same experience as you. Like, they may not have children. So sometimes our social circles, they may not have children, or all their kids may be grown. So you may be a little bit later having your baby, and all of your friends' kids are much older than yours. So you're still kind of feeling like you're going through this experience by yourself. And having people that you feel like you can trust to care for your baby, or that you can really be like your raw, authentic self. The postpartum period is not always pretty. And so during that time, in many of the circles that we're around, we feel the need to like put on, right? I need to present myself polished. I need to have it together. And postpartum is not that way. It is quite the opposite. When we are talking about having support and really feeling like you have people who can do for you and care for you. And much of that is, as new moms and new parents, a lot of times we want to do it all. We're used to doing it all. We may be working and, tackling to-do lists every day and just running businesses, or, in the corporate workspace, really tackling life challenges. And then we have a baby and we are needing to rely on other people to help care for us, even in the most simplistic day-to-day types of things. And that can be really challenging, having good support, or feeling like we have the support that can really help us. Relationship changes. So anyone who's had a new baby in their life, a new child in their life, knows that comes with role changes and adjustments for you and your partner. And that can really be challenging. I really feel like, the view of everything changes. Your lens changes when you have a child, because what before may have been just fun and kind of carefree, now it's like, this is going to affect this other human being as they're growing up for the rest of their life. So things that may not have felt that serious or been a big deal in your relationship may be highlighted as being detrimental to this child's development, or to the functionality and the health of the relationship of you all as parents together. And that can be really challenging as well. Along with relationship changes, what I'll also say is the role of support can alter greatly, and need to alter greatly, when someone is pregnant, not being able to do all of the things that they used to do to care for their family or their responsibilities in their household. They may not be able to keep up with all of that. So the partner needing to step in and support in ways that they may not have had to support previously. And that just trickles right on into the postpartum period, where mom or the birthing person's, their main role, we might say, is now like taking care of this little person. And so now the partner's main role is taking care of them. And that can be quite a dynamic shifting than how it was when we're both just able-bodied, normal human beings taking care of ourselves and spending time with each other and living together, versus having children. So other things that contribute to isolation in the postpartum period are values, culture, lifestyle. These things may not be what is the cultural norm, right? In our Western society, we may come from different backgrounds that will greatly influence how we're raising our children, but we may not have that support of people who are also living lifestyles that are similar to us. So that can create some isolation that can come into place for people who are in the LGBTQ family and community. That can come from people who are even immigrants to this country, that can really contribute to their isolation. And then people, as we have gotten older, may have adopted values that are different than our family values, right? And that we'll talk a little bit more about some of those nuances, that as we have matured and become parents, we may do things differently than our parents did with us. And that can even create isolation, where you would, usually utilize your family as a support system. That might be a little rocky because your values may have changed from what your family, I forgot what you called it, your nuclear family is your little family, you and your child and your partner, but your larger family, there's a term for that, but I don't remember what it is. But your values may be different from them now. Okay. And we talked about social circles with, some of your friends having children that are older, or some of your friends may not have kids at all. And that might not always line up as far as timing goes with when you are becoming a new parent. Finding balance for us, for the millennial parents in the room, I'm gonna say that, right? So these are millennial parents where we are, we're interested usually in, like, what does the evidence say, right? Oh, that's old school. What does the evidence actually say about X, Y, and Z? And that's how I'm going to parent my children. And that can create its own challenges as we are parenting. And that can be another area where we need community, right? So if I am trying to follow positive parenting and I'm trying to do more of a conscious parenting lifestyle, then I might need some community with that, because it's hard and it's challenging. So having some people who are also on that path and on that journey, that can be a whole nother area that we as service providers, as care providers, can create, these little small niche communities for even something like the tradition versus the evidence when we're talking about discipline. We also see challenges when we're talking about sleep for babies, right? So some people are into sleep training and other people are into the attachment parenting, and they're all little niches of how do we do this parenting journey. These babies didn't come with instructions, unfortunately. And we're all trying to figure it out every single day. And so sleep can be another one. That's a small one, but it's definitely one, and kind of goes into like the parenting and lifestyle journey that we may be on. Health, how do we care for our bodies? How do we care for the bodies of our babies? We have a lot of, conversation with parents who are trying to figure out what kind of medications they want to introduce to their baby, talking about vaccinations, talking about, holistic measures versus more of a medicine kind of route. And people are really struggling with that. And people are really trying to find their place with what makes them feel what they're most comfortable with. And that's really important for their parenthood journey. And it's really important for people to have support and resources as they're exploring and figuring out what fits them and what's going to be best for them and their family. Diet and feeding can be that can be its own, right? So with diet, we have alternative like diets. So a lot of people are now vegan or vegetarian. They don't eat meat. And that's one example of like the diet that might be traditional versus, what is more newly adopted for this family. And that could be an area that could isolate or differentiate them from their larger community of support. And breastfeeding, chest feeding can be very, very challenging sometimes, or can lack support from our larger family unit. And we know that, as far as Black families, breastfeeding, Black mothers have the lowest breastfeeding rates in our population. And so when we look at the generations, that can be a whole nother challenge of, okay, I want to breastfeed my baby because I know the evidence says that is has health benefits for me and baby. So that's what I want to do. But, the next generation above me may not have breastfed. So mom or grandma may not be familiar with breastfeeding and may say, oh, that baby's not getting enough milk. Let me give that baby a bottle. So that can create a lot of challenges when you're talking about trusting people to care for your baby, differences in your generations of your family circle and your community, and how those things are playing out to really support the postpartum family, you know. Oh, we all know about the societal pressures affecting parenthood. So current events, crime, everything that is happening, you know, don't turn on the news, don't look at Facebook, don't look at anything, because it's crazy. This world is crazy. And all the things that are happening outside of us that are causing a lot of stress really affect our parenthood journey and what we even feel safe, you know, doing with our children. We have, you know, children just playing in their front yard and getting kidnapped by the FedEx guy. Like, what in the world is happening around us? But it's terrifying, and it's terrifying to new parents. We also are, you know, I guess I think we're still, right, in the pandemic. I don't know, when does it end, y'all? Like, what's the point where we're like, okay, we're out of it? I don't know. I think we're still in this pandemic now. And that's a part of the societal pressures affecting parenthood. I know what we have seen with COVID is a lot of new parents, you know, we've seen, of course, crazy spikes in perinatal mood anxiety disorders, which, of course, right, when we have people isolated socially, when we are to be creatures who have community, and especially during the season of being a new parent, bringing a new baby into this world where you really are relying so heavily on your support system, but being too afraid to let anyone in to help. So you're trying to figure it all out and do it all yourself, which many new moms and many new families were doing that. But you know, there are ways to definitely be smart about our safety and our health when it comes to the pandemic, but also figuring out how can we have some support. So there's definitely a balance there. There's definitely things that new families can put into place to decrease the likelihood of exposing their new baby and themselves to the virus, but also having some support, because it's almost a balance. It's almost like a tug of war between your physical health that you're trying to keep and your mental health not suffering due to the isolation of having this new baby. So those current events have definitely put a lot of pressure on our parenting journey. Schools and childcare, that kind of goes more so into the opportunities that are available for our children when it comes to schools, when it comes to childcare. Like I mentioned before, trusting someone to care for your children can be a really big challenge, especially if new parents have had trauma in their childhood. That can really be an exceptional hurdle to try to have someone caring for your child. And not to mention the financial strain of having childcare, or the other aspects of financial strain that come along with having our new child and our family unit in place. And so these can all be some of the societal pressures that can put a strain on new parents during this time. And then we're trying to figure out who we are. This is all new. This is all new. I'm used to going when I want to go, coming when I want to come, and doing my own thing. I'm used to getting up when I need to get up for work and going to bed when I'm tired. Everything, you know, from your day to day to, you know, how you live your life changes when you add a child to the scenario, into the mix. So this can bring about a lot of identity discovery, right? Rediscovering, like, who am I? Who am I as a mom? Who am I now that this baby is here? And also, many of us trying to get back to who we were. And that struggle of trying to get back to who we were and the way things were before baby came really contributes to a lot of stress, as opposed to let's adjust and embrace this is our new norm. and what can I adjust around me to make my life a little easier. Sometimes that comes with career changes, having and needing a little more flexibility in schedule, having or needing, different nuances of how can I take care of my child and be present with my child as much as I would like to be present with them, and how can I still have the career that I want and be investing in my own future. So it might be, schooling. It's not always work. Sometimes it's school that we're going after. And how can I still keep up with me and the things that I'm going after for myself and be a new parent to this baby? The best way, when I had my daughter, I got a promotion when I got back to work. And it was like, oh, yay, promotion is usually very exciting. And I was very excited about it, right? But there was also this daunting part of that, of like, how am I going to do this? Like, how is it possible? But I worked in a company, I'm telling you, I was so fortunate. I worked in a company that was ran by moms. Everybody was a mom who was, we had one guy who worked with us, who was part of our corporate team. And, some of the investment team and all of them were men. But for the most part, it was, women from the center, our nurses and our admin staff on up to like our chief operating officer and our CFO, women, moms running it. And so I had a conversation, and I share this with new moms all the time. But I had a conversation with her. How in the world do you do this? Like, how do you juggle being a mom and having this really important role that is critical and requires a lot of you, of time and energy? How do I do it? And she said, it's like juggling. So every day you'll drop a ball, whether it's your family ball, it might be your wife ball, you might drop your work ball today. But tomorrow, you make sure you pick that ball up and you get it back in rotation. So every day, just balancing. I had to work late last night and I didn't even see my baby. She was already in the bed by the time I got home. But tomorrow, we're going to the park and we're getting ice cream. And so that balance, that juggling of, it may not feel balanced every day, but just make sure that whatever ball you drop today, that you can pick that one up tomorrow. I thought that was the best advice I think I've gotten on work-life balance when it came to being a new mom. So I always like to share that one. So career changes can be necessary, whether you're going to work or stay at home, if you have the option of doing that and what that might mean. But that can be a big kind of barrier that people are trying to overcome and figure out how they can be present with their children and how they can still advance in their careers and in their own personal goals. Flexibility goes along with that, adjusting to your new role. That can be as simple as, what you do in your day-to-day and what is required of you as a parent, and how to have the support that you need to not feel like you're carrying the whole world on your shoulders, and not forgetting about taking care of yourself as you are trying to figure out who you are in this new role, but taking time for yourself without guilt, and knowing that self-care is not selfish, but it is necessary for you to be the best you that you can be. So, to be the best mom that you can be, or parent that you can be, it is really critical that we are able to really take some time for ourselves and pour into our own cup, right? Tips for building your village. So how do I help new families to build their village, and what are some of the benefits to participating in some of these? So with a lot of people being transplants, that's where my heart is like in the transplants. Like, who doesn't have their family around you? I know it's hard. So here are some of the things, this is something that I read about in leisure. Is like building community and how to foster community where you are. I read a wonderful book, if anyone is interested in nerding out on things like this, like me. But it's called This Is Where You Belong. It's by Melody Warnick, I believe it's her last name. If anyone wants to read about being or building community where you are. But some of the tips that I have found for helping people to build their own village would be attending baby and kids activities. And some of the benefits of doing that would be to socialize your kids. So even babies can greatly benefit from socialization and being around other babies. And also, you're going to meet new parents. And if you meet people in your local community where you frequent, then you're more likely to be able to establish relationships throughout time because you're coming to the same place. It's much more difficult to try to have a relationship with someone when you all don't have anywhere in common that you have to go anyway. So you are going somewhere because this is part of your routine and you're running into the same people. Those are the easiest relationships to maintain because you're already going to be going to this place. Same thing with going to churches, going to community events, library story times, there's an education foundation that's here local to me in Eastern Wake County. And I'm sure there are programs similar to this program in other areas, but the education foundation, you can come, kids 0 to 5 can come there. And the itty bitties, they play. They have story time for them. They have the little centers where they can, play in the kitchen, make believe, or dress up, or play with the train. And it's a great opportunity. I've met quite a few of some of my close friends doing the education foundation with my daughter when she was little. And so that's a great opportunity as well to meet other families. And they actually have a preschool component to the one that's closer by me. So as they grow up, you can still continue. Childbirth classes is a good opportunity to start off, right? So thinking about community and building community, even when you're pregnant, a childbirth class is a great opportunity because guess what? Y'all all about to have babies around the same time. So, and you're a part of some kind of community that brought you all to that childbirth class together, and being able to capitalize on that could be really helpful and beneficial. Community events and then play spaces. Meeting neighbors. So meeting neighbors actually helps you to feel more safe and connected with your community. And that is, with our current events, we talked about everything that's going on, crime and all the craziness in the world. We all need to feel safer and more connected to one another. So you can find opportunities for support for your family, childcare, right? You might need a neighbor who is able to provide childcare from time to time, or find a little grandparent, right? So we find someone in the community whose kids are grown up and they're itching to get a baby in their arms. Perfect. Let's be buddies. But meeting people from different ages and different backgrounds to create that community in your neighborhood definitely has great benefits of support for your family. And then making friends, learning about local resources, and also meeting other children that your kids can have play dates with. A couple of examples of ways to do that would be the Nextdoor app could be an opportunity of where people in the community are gathering, and then Facebook groups. So we have Facebook groups for your neighborhood, usually Facebook groups that you can really seek out for different niches. So we talked about these different parenting niches. You can find a Facebook group for, positive parenting or vegan parents, and getting recipes on, what to feed our babies if we are living more of a vegan lifestyle. Local parent groups is also a great opportunity. So Triangle Mamas of Color is our mom's group. You can find it on Facebook under Triangle Mamas of Color. So be sure to share that as a resource. There's also TAPS, which stands for Triangle Area Parenting Support, which is another local resource. Emerald Doulas has parent groups, and they have a LGBTQ parent group. So that can be a resource that, you might not know of in the area. So I definitely wanted to make sure that you all knew about that one. And they have a few different parent groups, but that one in particular, I just wanted to have on here for that. And then La Leche League can be a great opportunity of meeting other breastfeeding parents. The Peanut app is an app for meeting moms. It's like moms meeting moms, so you can find moms, like other new parents that are local to you. And that's a pretty, I love that application. I think it's such a wonderful concept to be able to meet people who are local to you that are also parents. So the Peanut app is a good one. And then postpartum international support groups for postpartum mood and anxiety disorders. So if anyone is struggling with postpartum depression, anxiety, psychosis, they have support groups that, of course, along with your therapist and your provider, having that support group can be really helpful. This can also be, I didn't list any here, but there are also support groups for loss. So we definitely want to keep that in mind for people who have lost their babies or who've had terminations and things like that. We want to keep that in mind, that they also will need some social support around them. Postpartum planning. So the biggest thing for this section that I wanted to share is start planning to build your village while you're pregnant. So encouraging people to plan for their postpartum period while they're still pregnant. And, one of the things was like, okay, the childbirth class, if I'm going to do a breastfeeding class, if I'm going to do anything that's like centered around my pregnancy, I want to keep in mind, I need my village postpartum. So let me start, kind of trying to build those relationships even for the postpartum period. So the postpartum plan, so season of receiving. So this is the season that we're in. When we have new babies, we're in a season of receiving. So asking for help when we need it and accepting help when it is offered are the two key components of being in your season of receiving and actually being able to receive, right? So many of us have this superwoman complex, where we wear our cape around and we can do it all. And no, I got it. Thank you. I'm fine, right? If people ask how you're doing and you just automatically spit out, oh, I'm good. You didn't even think about it. Like, are you really okay? Are you really good? But that your season of receiving it's one of those things you want to keep in mind so that you can actually be open to receiving support. Okay. Create a plan. So a plan for postpartum would include things like who's available, who can I call, in the morning time, who can I call in the afternoon, who can I call in the evening, who's available for me. We can also have in there a meal train, who can cook, who wants to help out. Let me give them some ways that they can help and create a meal train. Talking about visitors and who can be there to physically support. It might be family coming in town. And we just want to think about, having a plan for, keeping everybody safe as far as COVID-19 goes when we're talking about visitors. And then postpartum doula support is another option, another area of support for having someone that can come in and help with the light housework, that can help you with caring for baby, and also can be there to provide some emotional support for you as you're going through this transition. Who can give me a date night, who can help care for older siblings, and how much time do me and my partner get off from work, and being strategic about that time and thinking about how we can support each other and how we can support our family with our vacation time or our maternity leave and paternity leave. And then these are tips for our providers, people in the community who are helping new parents, but discuss postpartum planning with them during the pregnancy. Provide group information for the groups that are already in our community and established. Be sure to give those out and think about those niches. Think about those different identities, the cultural identities or lifestyle identities that may contribute to isolation for them, and seek out some groups that can help cater to those things. So providing group information. Do an early check-in postpartum. So most of our providers do a 6-week check-in, but an earlier check-in is so much better. I mean, at 6 weeks, my goodness, a lot can happen in 6 weeks. We can really go down the hill in 6 weeks' time. So an earlier check-in. I know that some practices are pushing for that and kind of changing and offering an earlier check-in for new moms, but definitely being proactive about checking in with them earlier in their postpartum journey to help make sure they have resources that they need. And then create opportunities for community. So if you are, a provider and you have all these pregnant families or all these new families that are coming to you, think about the community that you want to create amongst them. So even if it's a Facebook group, that's pretty low hanging fruit. Anybody can create a Facebook group and have people create community within, your practice. But I think that's a beautiful way if we can just kind of change our lens as like, okay, I'm providing this service, but also think about the people who are receiving the service and the support that they need. So creating opportunities for community would be a beautifully like empowering way to help new families, and any business can do that. So if you're a chiropractor, if you're an OB office, if you are a personal trainer, any business can really work to create community amongst their clientele. And I think that more of us need to really take on that responsibility to help. And thank you. That is it, guys. Thank you all so much. For anyone who has questions or wants to seek out, more information about our moms group or any of the services that we provide at Triangle Doulas of Color, our website is just triangledoulasofcolor.com. Phone number, email address is just triangledoulasofcolor@gmail. And then on Instagram and Facebook, you can find me at Triangle Doulas of Color. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was amazing. And I will say there was quite a lot of conversation happening in the chat. You also have a few questions, if you don't mind us.
Do you want me to read some of them, Suzanne?
Sure.
So one is, how did you present the first mom group to the community? And were there already speakers you had lined up, or did you wait until you saw what the group wanted?
So I presented it just on a one-on-one basis with some of the moms that I had talked to about the opportunity that I was looking at. And then I created the Facebook group. So when I created the Facebook group and established the doula business, then I started to promote the moms groups just to the community, to whoever wanted to come. As far as the topics go, there's been some transition, right? So when we first started out, I really looked at what did the moms in the group offer that would be really helpful and beneficial to, kind of the moms as a whole, and asked them individually would they speak. Then I transitioned when the pandemic hit, we went to virtual. And so we had different topics that we talked about with mental health and, decreasing stress and talking about the pandemic, right? So we talked about more what's happening around us and how do we navigate it. And then we went to more, so now that we came back to in-person all summer long, we did in-person groups at the park. And now we have a variety of what we offer. So we have moms groups, regular moms groups, where it's just, we get together, we may have a topic, we may not, right? We might freestyle and just say, what's going on? I might have some icebreakers, and we're just building community and getting to know each other, letting our kids run wild. We have outings. So the outings are events that you would probably want to do with your kids anyway, around a certain time of year. So we go to pumpkin patch. We did that in like October. We did like fruit picking. So we have the events that are for your family. And then we have mom only events. So our mom only event in December, we had a mom only event, and it was a spa day. It was called A Gift for Mama. So it was beautiful. We had got many facials, we got massages, did a deep journaling session, and we enjoyed, just a small group of us. And yeah, so now I have a few different ways that I really host the moms group.
That's amazing. So you're doing amazing work in the community. And a question was, are the classes and groups free for parents to attend?
They are not. So the classes and groups are a charge. There's a charge that's attached to the classes. Our doula clients can select packages that include their classes, and anyone in the community can attend our classes. The moms groups are usually about $15. If we're doing an outing, then it's whatever the cost of our outing is. So getting into the park or into the farms.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So what has been the most helpful resource or practice that you have found for moms who are feeling isolated?
Ooh, I love that I got that question, because I actually wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about this. So one of the things that I found We have the Facebook group, right? We have the monthly meetups, but what I've been like really striving for is how can we create really close bonded relationships amongst these new moms so that they could actually lean on each other for support if they needed it. And I guess my little experiment has been has been a Marco Polo group. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Polo, but Marco Polo is an app that's you're essentially like text message. It's like a group text message, but it's video. And so Marco Polo has really allowed, so this like first group that I've done it with, to become really bonded and really like close friends. And we are just in there talking about our day-to-day, nothing fancy, you know, our hair is not done and we don't have our makeup on and we're just chit-chatting in real life. It's raw, right? It's like we are being our most authentic selves, running around talking about these kids stressing us out, venting about our husbands. But I would say that has so far been the most helpful resource for us for building community is the Marco Polo app.
That's awesome. I need to figure that out. So another question. So based on your experiences as a birth and postpartum doula, when do you find it best to have conversations around like support, childcare stress during that, you know, but yeah, when?
Yeah. So we usually do our postpartum planning conversations at about 35 weeks to start thinking about and talking about, you know, what do they have lined up. We may touch on it a little bit in earlier visits, but our visit schedule is typically around 20 weeks, 28 weeks, and 35 weeks. We have 3 prenatal visits that we do with our clientele, which is sometimes a little more than what other you know, doula services offer, but I think that relationship building is really important. So having those 3 prenatal visits, the third one, we do have a section that's dedicated to postpartum planning. But as a new parent trying to sign up for childcare like daycare, you want to be thinking about that way in advance because they typically have wait lists. So you want to get on the wait list. If you have a school in mind that you really want to be at, or you want your children to be at as far as the daycare goes, get on that wait list as soon as possible in your pregnancy. You don't want to wait to 35 weeks or you're not going to have a spot.
Yeah, or like me, I was like ready to give birth and then, yeah. Anyway, that is a hard conversation, y'all.
Yeah.
So I think that's the rest in the chat are comments. I want to open it up to see if other folks have any other questions they want to ask.
I'll ask a question. So as you're providing your doula support and from your experiences, in what ways do you feel like healthcare providers could be more supportive? Or is there a need that's just completely being overlooked that a healthcare provider is in position to provide or support?
Yeah, so I would say as a healthcare provider, you have a lot on your plate already to try to support these families. So connecting them to resources that are specifically designed to give them that support would probably be the most helpful with the least amount of work on you. So providing them with resources with different community groups, providing them information about doula support, because, you know, part of the doula's role is to connect them to resources that are going to be more about their experience than about specifically their healthcare. And so definitely recommending and talking to them about doula support early in their pregnancy so that it can be something they really give thought to. If our providers recommend doula support, oh, we're really going to think about it then, you know, where we might have heard about it, but if a provider is saying that support could be helpful for us, then a lot of families are really going to look more into it and really explore it. A lot of people still don't know about doula support, and you don't know what you need postpartum until you're postpartum, and then it's a little late, right? So that journey is brand new. When you get in that water, you're like, whoa, I have to care for you, and my body is doing this, and my mood is doing that, and whew. So the prenatal preparation, I think, would be really good of getting their community of support gathered around them and having them think about those things beforehand. Thank you for your question. Anyone else?
Well, and I hope everyone just got a chance to peek at the chat too. There are some great resources shared and just a lot of shared understanding about that experience of new parenthood. And then there was a small side conversation for those of us that, you finally adjust to being a parent and then they move out and you have to figure it out all over again. So I guess it's just a way to keep us always evolving and changing. And, Suzanne mentioned also, the new normal changes every 6 months, every time, there's a developmental change. So it's definitely, it's important to be in community. Yeah. Well, I'm going to turn it back to you, Suzanne, but first, I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you all for having me.
And for the amazing work that you do and the beautiful gift of you that you offer to your community is really amazing.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have been here today. Thank you all for having me.
All right, thank you so much. And as I put in the chat, we have the evaluation for today's community of practice session. Please do fill that out. Our next community of practice is going to be on the 26th on lactation support and education. You can submit questions in advance. Actually, our presenters going forward have asked if we could get questions or ideas or thoughts you'd like covered in advance. That's helpful so that the presentations are really geared for what we're looking for. So that one's on the 26th at noon, and I dropped the link in the chat. Our next office hour is January 9th for our MHI sites. And then the big reminder that you can now order our postpartum toolkit. So the postpartum plan, for example, is now free to order at the DPH warehouse. And I can drop that link in the chat again. But that's really exciting. This has been recorded, so we will send the follow-up with the some updates about the upcoming events. And also thanks to Ste'Keira for this wonderful session and links to Triangle Doulas of Color and her own presentations. All right, thanks everyone. I hope you have a warm holiday season. I know it's a joyous time. It can also be a challenging time, but you are on our minds and we are sending peace and love your way.
And maybe the rain will turn to snow.
A miracle.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.